So we are here in National Poetry Month during National Poetry Month 2024, and I am with you in a live stream once again because I am failing. I have screwed up. I am a failure. Um, I'm just too tired right now, guys. This is the 11th of the month. I have not had a day off yet this month. I am unlikely to have a day off this month until around the 16th of the month. So I do apologize for this not being the regularly scheduled upload, but I figured that we could do a little bit of. I haven't done a live stream on the channel in a while, and I thought that it might be fun to jump on and get through some Emily Dickinson. These are not going. Some of the poems that are in Echoes of Emily might pop up in this, but this is not going to be exclusively those poems. What I'm going to be doing here is just sort of shooting the breeze on Emily Dickinson. So if at any point you do have questions, anything to talk about, by all means, bring it up and we will get through those things as we go. Say hi if you are here. And one of the things that I thought might be interesting to talk about on a live would be the hauntology aspect of what is going on with these videos and why I decided to try to get a little bit of hauntology worked in to this playlist. Get some hauntology worked into the Echoes of Emily series. In fact, hauntology is sort of why I decided to name. Hello, Kristen. Why I decided to name the series for National Poetry Month Echoes of Emily. Hauntology has to do with the, depending on what level of hauntology you're getting into, the more popular aspect of hauntology, if that could be said, if it could be reasonably said that there is a popular aspect of hauntology, is one that deals with popular culture and the echoes of those things in our daily lives. Pop culture from the past popping up in today's world in lieu of, if you will, in lieu of new things happening, new things arriving, new things being created. I happen to think there is a little bit of not necessarily. I think there's a little bit of being lost in the moment that is going on with some of the writing around hauntology and those things. Mark Fisher's work, I think, is a little bit lost in the moment. I think it does not have quite the clarity and depth of generations of culture as opposed to the culture in which Mark Fisher had found himself. Still interesting writings, still something that I am working my way through, but I don't think that it is necessarily as profound as sometimes it is hailed, if you will, to be. So we are here with Emily Dickinson, and if you have any requests for Emily Dickinson poems, be sure to let me know. I thought we would get through at least 5 Emily Dickinson poems and see where we get from there. I thought we might start this video with where the series Echoes of Emily is going to end, and that is with my favorite poem of all time, I Died for Beauty. It reads as such: I died for beauty, but was scarce adjusted in the tomb, when one who died for truth was lain in an adjoining room. He questioned softly why I failed. For beauty, I replied, and I for truth. Themself are one, we brethren are, he said. And so, as kinsmen met a night, we talked between the rooms until the moss had reached our lips and covered up our names. This is not only my favorite poem, it was my first favorite poem. I found it my sophomore year in high school. I was assigned the poem in class, and I imagine that sophomore year, you're 15, 16 years old. Everyone's a little bit emo at 16. I imagine that was what was prompting a lot of the deep thought that went into this poem originally. I think that if you are willing to take poetry seriously, Emily Dickinson is a poet that you cannot ignore. Maybe you're not willing to take poetry seriously. Maybe you're only willing to take poetry for what you think poetry is, whatever that is to you. Maybe poetry to you is beauty. For me, poetry is truth. So if you are only willing to take poetry insofar as it is something which is beautiful to you, perhaps you don't recognize someone like Charles Bukowski. Perhaps you would not even recognize someone such as Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson not adhering to very many norms of poetry, not adhering to very many of the things that make poetry pretty and picturesque. Many of Emily Dickinson's poems are quite ugly to look at on the page. Reading them is something else entirely, but if you're just looking at the poem, it is not a beautiful thing to behold. So, I don't remember where I was going. That said, if you are someone who holds poetry to be something which is beautiful as opposed to that which is true, neither will this poem make much sense to you. There is a type of truth in beauty. Invariably, there is. It is something that it seems we have lost in society today. There was at one point in time merit to be had, and I don't know that I necessarily think this is right, but there was merit to be had in that which was beautiful. Beautiful people were thought to be touched by the gods themselves. Now they're more subjects of ridicule than anything else. You can't. There's very few non-beautiful people on the tabloid covers. I know because we sell them where I work. But that aside, it is possible to think of truth and beauty as the same thing, because if something is true, how could it not in its own way be beautiful? If something is true, that is to say it is authentic. Authenticity is one of those things that is sort of authenticity is one of these things that is sort of absent-mindedly, I think, appreciated by most people. We think we understand the authentic when we see it. We think we understand the authentic when we get it, and we appreciate it for as much. We snuff out those things which we do not believe to be authentic. Kristen, you don't have to love me. I'm quite unlovable. I have a face that only a mother could love. I have a personality not even my mother loves. It's a rough life. Lindsay says, my favorite poet along with Emily Dickinson is Mary Oliver and her focus on nature. Lindsay, you'll have to tell me a little bit more about Mary Oliver. I have limited experience with Mary Oliver. Mary Oliver was a name that I had not even, I don't believe, heard of until I was in graduate school and I was spending days at a time in the library. And Mary Oliver was one of the few poets who had actual books on the shelf. Poetry sections are shrinking everywhere, whether they are for sale or rent. and I read an entire book of Mary Oliver poetry. I don't remember much of it. I remember, and you'll have to correct me if this is not Mary Oliver, I remember a snowfall being compared to um, static on a TV screen, but I don't think it was a visual comparison. I think it was a sound comparison. So that is what it is. Leo says, "That's a nice shirt. It's so good to see you. I hope you are well. I'm glad you went live." Well, thank you for being here, Leo. It's a decent shirt. It's a very old shirt. Most of my clothes are miserably old. So that's what you get when you are dressing as a curmudgeon and an old man. Leo also says, "I totally made a document writing down questions I had for you when you went live, so I'm going to ask those now." Cool. Kristen says, "I greatly dislike plastic water bottles." Well, there's a love and hate, I suppose. You were here to love and to hate, Kristen. I do refill plastic water bottles multiple times, so it's not as bad for the environment, but certainly probably much worse for my own health with the leaching of the plastic. Leo says, "What do you think makes for a better writer? Someone that has absolutely no morals at all, or someone who considers themselves to be highly moral?" So here's here's the thing. You're forcing me into a terrible choice here because certainly, well, I mean, I'm just straight up flat out. Someone who has absolutely no morals at all would be the better writer. For many reasons. For many, many reasons. First of all, what is writing if there's no bad guy? Right? You can't know a bad guy if you don't have those thoughts. You can't be the bad guy on the page if you cannot at least entertain the ideas of the immoral, and those who consider themselves highly moral can't do that. Now, in ironic fashion, those who consider themselves highbrow and high moral are often the crummiest among us. They're often the most fungus among us. They are often those highly moral folks so blinded by their own pseudo-high-mindedness, so blinded by their own concept of the self that they don't see the dark nature of considering yourself better than other people. So someone who considers themselves to be highly moral oftentimes isn't particularly highly moral. Now, let's pretend they are. Let's pretend they really are very highly moral. They're Mother Teresa, okay? And we're not counting Christopher Hitchens' opinion of Mother Teresa. We'll say textbook Mother Teresa. We'll say Mother Teresa as she is portrayed through popular culture. That Mother Teresa. Is that really going to be all that interesting? What is she going to write about? One of the greatest aspects of literature is that we get to use it. So I believe this is in The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins. This is the original portrayal of a meme. If I watch you make a mistake by walking into the tall grass and you get eaten by a lion, I get to learn from you being a meal, right? That is inevitably the case. We get to learn from other people's mistakes. One of the greatest ways that literature lends itself to being a tool to humanity is that while we're reading, we get to make other people's mistakes without having to live them. The same way that I watch you walk into the tall grass and you end up on a lion's dinner plate, I know from watching your story not to walk into the tall grass. In the same way that in The Great Gatsby, we watch Jay Gatz pursue the woman he thinks he loves with everything inside of him, but not really. Pursue this woman with everything that he thinks she wants. And the outcome is miserable. I can look at that and say, okay, there's a lesson to be had there. So that's why someone who is immoral makes a better writer than someone who considers themselves highly moral. Kristen says, why are you being short-sighted? I don't remember if I'm short-sighted or nearsighted or long-sighted. I'm sighted. There's glasses. T. Ellie. It's somewhat unrelated, but do you like Andrew Marvell? I love his The Definition of Love. I may have never read Andrew Marvell. It's possible I have read no Andrew Marvell. That poem, The Definition of Love, is that a poem? Is that a play? Andrew Marvell wrote plays too, right? I'm tired. I don't know. I suppose I'm not a fan of Andrew Marvell, but it's possible I could get there. I will write down. Got to find a scrap of paper now. It's a bank statement, but it will work. Marvell, The Definition of Love. I'll look into it, TLE. So, moving on. Kristen says, I think the situation is pertinent. I don't remember which situation that is now. Lindsay says, I don't remember Mary Oliver's poem comparing snow to static, but she does focus on quiet moments in life. I do remember that from the compilation that I read. At that time, I think I was too much in the collection of literature phase to really appreciate poetry about the quiet moments, if that makes any sense. I think that just as there is a season to the year, there is a season, hypothetically, to the day, there is a season to your life. That season of my life that I was in, I was working frantically to acquire different literary experiences. And I don't think that Mary Oliver lends herself very well to that season of life. Not to say that she's not a great poet, obviously, with all of the work that she has out there, she is. Leo says, imaginary Mother Teresa, LOL. Yeah. Kristen says, I feel a bit better now. I'm trying to think. So much of this is in the past tense now that I can't remember exactly what it was that... Oh, I'm assuming that's about the water bottle, that I refill the water bottles. Leo says, love that answer. You pass. My second question was, with all the reading that you do, how much do you read? And do you think you are reading? I'm absolutely not reading enough. Not right now, especially. One of the things that is ironically hampering my reading is running the channel. If you guys see a 10-minute video, it's at least an hour of prep. It takes at least an hour to get a 10-minute video on the channel. If you have been watching the videos that I've been putting up this month, that's a lot more editing. So for the 20-minute video, plus for example, the poetry discussions that I do. The poetry discussions that I do are let me read the poem, get a thought, and go with it, versus the Echoes of Emily series that I'm doing, which is let me have an intro to the poem to set up the poem, produce the actual reading of the poem, have an interpretation of the poem, at least one talking point. I try to go with multiple talking points, then throw in a talking point for nihilism as well as hauntology. And finally, do the AI pictures at the end of the video. I think that's really interesting, that stuff. If you haven't seen those videos, what I'm doing is I am uploading Emily Dickinson poems into Chat GPT, which is also DALL-E, the image generator, and hitting the generate button, and wild stuff. So the end of all of the Echoes of Emily videos are compilations of AI generated images based on the poems by Emily Dickinson. So there's the I'm infatuated with that right now. I am infatuated with that right now. Where are we? Oh yeah, I don't read enough, and a lot of that is to do with just a time crunch. I work at least 40 hours a week doing the channel, a video every day. So I'm not reading enough. I wish I was reading more. I plan to, at some point in my life, get to the point where I'm reading too much, but that's just not right now. TLE says it is a poem. Marvell, The Definition of Love, is a poem. Leo says, I just went to the library and borrowed The Wicked Life and Times and audiobook, and I'm enjoying getting through that. I don't know what that is. You'll have to let me know if it is ultimately worth picking up. Lindsay says, I find The Great Gatsby infinitely rereadable, and Fitzgerald and Zelda's relationship / life fascinating. I read a biography on Zelda and Nancy Milford that has stuck with me. I think I remember that biography, Zelda by Nancy Milford. I think I remember that biography coming out. It's interesting, isn't it? When you think about the biography there, when you think about the character of Zelda, why F. Scott Fitzgerald? You know, how much different could F. Scott Fitzgerald's life have been if he hadn't he found his opposite. He found the great irony of F. Scott Fitzgerald's life is that he was a very skittish, maybe not politically conservative, but conservative individual, kind of a always described as sort of a scaredy cat kind of individual. He finds someone like Zelda, who is out there, way out there. He loves her, probably like too much loves her. And he died of a heart attack, right? So he loved the thing that took him out of his shell so much that his inner nature ended up prevailing, and he has a heart attack. Like, I don't know the situations or circumstance surrounding his heart attack, but I mean, normally that's what heart attacks are, right? Especially for a guy. He was 40, maybe. F. Scott Fitzgerald when he died, maybe 40. I don't know 100%, but yeah, what a wild set of circumstances. Imagine Zelda and Ernest Hemingway had fallen in love with each other instead. I mean, how combustible would that have been, right? Instead of going out the way he did, he might have been on a 1-and-1, if you understand what I'm saying. Trying not to get absolutely smacked by YouTube, but you give one, you take one. I think. Where are we at here? Oh, F. Scott, The Great Gatsby, infinitely rereadable. I think for The Great Gatsby to be infinitely rereadable, what you have to be willing to do is what you have to be willing to do is accept the characters. If you cannot accept the characters in The Great Gatsby, if you cannot find a way to be interested, you don't have to like them. You don't have to like them. I don't know if there's anybody likable in The Great Gatsby. You have to find a way to be interested by the characters. If you can do that, then there's new stuff to interpret every time you read the novel. You're absolutely correct. If you can't get past that phase, if you can't get past, so it's kind of like American Psycho, right? A lot of people just can't read the novel. There is nothing, in their opinion, redeemable about the novel, about the characters, about the narrative, about any of it. And I can understand that. I don't know that I can empathize with it, but I can understand it. And if you were in that same place with The Great Gatsby, I can understand getting halfway through and quitting. There's also The Great Gatsby has some beautiful paragraphs, but if you're not sold on it, they just seem superfluous. T. Ellie says, I want to read all Emily Dickinson's poems. For now, I'm trying to grok Wallace Stevens. Here's my suggestion. If you want to read Emily Dickinson, if you really want to read Emily Dickinson, pick this up. The Complete Poems of Emily Dickinson. Don't rely on compilations of Emily Dickinson. Get the whole shebang. And don't try to read it cover to cover. Don't do it. Pick it up, leaf through it, find something that looks digestible, read it, decide whether or not you like it, make an interpretation on it, really try to wriggle something out of every Emily Dickinson poem that you read. And if you can do that, because some of them are really difficult, if you can just pick them at random and go, I think you'll get a lot more out of it. Leo says, I appreciate how much you work and put into your videos as someone who likes to read. I appreciate you being here. Kristen says, I find The Great Gatsby ludicrously overrated. See, yeah, I can understand. I happen to love the novel. I happen to find that it is, as Lindsay suggested, infinitely rereadable. I think that is a novel that you can find something new on every page each time you read it. But I can understand thinking it's overrated. I believe I was on my third read before I really found a love for that novel. So certainly I can understand that sentiment. T. Ellie says there was a movie called Midnight in Paris. Yeah, about writer Zelda is in it. She's very controversial. That movie was great. It was great for Tom Hiddleston playing F. Scott Fitzgerald. He did a really good job. And I don't know who that fellow was that played Hemingway, but by God, it was a good one. I don't know if I would like that novel that movie if I watched it again. I think that I was in a very indulgent place when I watched that movie. So maybe I would like it if I saw it again, but I'm not sure. Patchy the Fox says, what does the fox say? You are so good with irony, you spot it like everywhere. It's a muscle. Spotting irony is a muscle. How can I make this case? Spotting an irony is a lot like critical thinking. Basically, it's an overlap of critical thinking, but it's a specific type of critical thinking. If you do that enough, if you dedicate yourself to critical thinking enough, not only will you always do it, but ironically, it will become a weakness because you become irritating to other people. And you can't take a first reading through anything. So there's always that too. I'm infinitely irritating to other people. Leo says the book Wicked is what inspired the stage musical, and a movie is coming out later this year that I'm probably going to go see. I remember that book coming out. Um, I never read it. I had a coworker at the time who that book got her back into reading. So there must be something there. Leo also says, what is your relationship to the eclipse? Did you see it? I'm in LA and nothing happened. The sky didn't even get dark or dim. I waited outside for 2 hours and nothing happened. I didn't care. Maybe I should. It's an astrological event. Maybe I should have been more appreciative of that. I saw the last one that mattered. The last one that mattered was the same day that my niece was born. So there was relevance in my life to that one. So I got the one that mattered, and I work overnights, and I believe that it was at like 2:30 or 4 or something. And though it is 5 right now, and I do have to be at work tonight at 11, um, I just didn't care that much on that day. I should have, probably. It's a big deal. It happens every few years, but oh well. Patchy the Fox says Fitzgerald was a drunk. A low down, good for nothing drunk. And a dummy and a drunk. That's what Patchy the Fox said. F. Scott Fitzgerald was a good for nothing boozer. Those are the words of Patchy. If you don't appreciate it, take it out with Patchy. The thing with irony being your weakness is, do you know when you're being struck by an opponent? Or maybe your opponent, ironically, hit you with a good one while you were looking the other way. My opponents only hit me when I'm looking the other way. They wouldn't dare to take on this resting bitch face. So, irony being a weakness is a weakness. Irony being a weakness is a strength. T. Ellie says, who are your favorite poets and writers? I love Emily Dickinson. She is my number one. Charles Bukowski is probably my number two. As I grow old and crotchety, I'm developing more of a love for Robert Frost. Maybe Robert Frost is my number three. I have to work too hard at Shakespeare to like him. William Wordsworth might be number four. John Donne, maybe number five. As far as novelists are concerned, we'll go with short story writers. Short story writers, Hemingway is number one. George Saunders is number two. John Steinbeck is maybe number three. Not a huge fan of William Faulkner's short stories. I might have to get back to you on a top five on short story writers. Those three are really, really good. I've spent a lot of time with their work. Where are my short story collections? Yeah, those are the only writers I have. Well, Kurt Vonnegut's short stories are really good. Maybe better than his novels. I'm going to go out on a ledge and say that. Novelists, not a big fan of Hemingway's novels. Novelists, Chuck Palahniuk wrote my favorite novel, so I have to put him at number five, despite the fact that he's never written anything else that was worth reading. Maybe number four would be Shirley Jackson. Number three would be maybe Faulkner. Two would be Bret Easton Ellis. Or maybe I have to move everybody else up. And let me see. I don't know. I might have to move everybody up. And maybe put Steinbeck at the bottom. But Of Mice and Men is probably in my top 5 novels. I'll have to put some thought into that, TLE. Patchy the Fox says, "You are so smart and so brave. Don't forget handsome. Don't forget handsome." TLE says, "I love Robert Frost too." TLE, I don't know anything about you. You must be a 90-year-old man just like myself. I have no idea how much of that is true. I'm just saying, if you like Robert Frost, that must be alive inside you. Um, I don't. Yeah, I think even even his inspirational poems are wildly crotchety. If you really get down to the bottom of them, the "I took the road less traveled by" is a poem that if you really want to read it and take it on, it just beats you up. It is not inspiring. Um, some would say Bat- Batal has no morals or the Marquis de Sade is mad. These are fairly important peeps in the literary world. What's your take? Yeah, I think that you learn. Look, in life, you learn from mistakes. Morality slipping is a mistake that you learn from. You do something and you say, "I don't feel real good about that." And it is wriggling inside you. And the way the writer deals with this is to make an imaginary situation. So, someone who has these lapses in judgment is going to be infinitely more interesting and profitable for the reader uh, than a nun. So, there's that. Lindsay says, "George Saunders is a short story writer that I enjoyed so much. He opened my eyes to appreciate short stories." Probably. I, was 10th of December his last short story collection? That was over a decade ago now, I believe. So that's unfortunate. But um, I think that in some ways, George Saunders' ascent to prevalence is unfortunate because he is a writer that is for for a, and I don't mean this in a disrespectful fashion, for a normie type of reader, they're not going to be able to take him seriously. And part of what the danger is in literature right now is part of what the danger in literature is right now is becoming too siloed. Those people who would be the gatekeepers and only let in what the quote unquote popular kids, and as that pertains to the literary landscape, what that means is people that no one else wants to read. The more literature becomes siloed, the less likely it is that the world of literature is going to be able to claw its way out of the absolute depths to which it has found itself. That's my Robert Frost rant. T. Ellie says, Borges is a great short story writer. You may like him. I've only read a couple of Borges short stories. So T. Ellie, do you have any suggestions for the short stories that I will try to bring them to the channel at the conclusion of National Poetry Month? Patchy the Fox says, yeah, you didn't understand my question. I'm asking you if the evil in Sade is different than the evil in Dostoevsky. Insofar as I understand the question now, I think they are different. Sade is almost, I don't know that it's even evil for evil's sake. I think that it is carnal for carnal's sake. Dostoevsky becomes the darkness of the human soul. This is something that is probably closer akin to evil in a non-religious scenario as we have. Adrian is watching himself right now behind the camera off to the corner with the ghost of Christmas past in disbelief that he grew into being a crotchety Scrooge. LOL JK. No, I was going to be a crotchety Scrooge the whole time. Kristen, you, sir, have an excellent channel that I faithfully watch every day. Well, thank you, Kristen. Thank you for being here. This channel is brought to you with much dedication. I cannot speak for the quality, but the dedication is there. Saunders published a recent short story collection called Liberation Day. Different than Adjustment Day? Liberation Day, I didn't enjoy it near as much as his older works. You're right. There was a decade in between publications. Well, he did come out with Lincoln and the Bardo in between, so I guess he could be forgiven for that to an extent. Liberation Day came out in 2022. Wow. I am behind. That's 2 years. I am behind on that. Leo says, this is my birthday month, so I'm excited for all the poems you do, so I've been enjoying watching this month. Well, happy birthday, Leo. So is Sade the better writer? I'm going to be real honest with you, Patchy. I am not qualified to answer that. I am not even qualified to speculate, I don't think. Leo says, do you have any birthday poems by Emily or anyone? I don't know. Birthday poems. The top of my head, I can't think of any. TL is fictionis a title, or just you're telling me to read the fiction works? You're not qualified to answer because I don't have the experience. I really don't. I have zero experience with Marquis de Sade. Obviously, culturally, I know some things. I have read about the work. With Dostoevsky, I have mainly read short stories. I am hoping I may have only read short stories. No, I read White Nights, which is more of a novella. Where we at? I've got too many books in too many places. Um, I was going to read Notes from Underground this year, so I'm hoping to do that. Let's talk about Miss. You are absolutely right, Kristen. We've got to work in at least. We've got to work in 4 more poems. But yeah, I don't have the experience with either of those writers. It is something I'm ashamed of. How this show. I guess I'm trying to figure out your statement earlier about the morality of a writer and how this shows their greatness to you. I suppose I don't know enough about their biography either. Look, it's so when I say these things, it's when I make this claim that it's much better to read an immoral writer than one who considers themselves to be highly moral. I think that there's a gray area whereby a whereby a someone who is intellectual in the way that Dostoevsky was could have intuited himself into immoral thoughts, because you don't write immoral characters as people unless you can do that. Does that make sense? So someone who considers themselves morality on high is going to consider anyone who is not moral as beneath them, as below them, as having no redeeming qualities. I would go so far as to wager, because I think you're right, if I'm not mistaken, Dostoevsky was a very religious man, right? It's possible to intuit your way into immoral thoughts. And it's possible also that you actually have those immoral thoughts and you're trying to convince yourself that you don't. If you are one of these people who considers yourself the very spigot of morality, in my experience with those people, they are wont to consider someone who they think is immoral to be an actual person. They think that evil, that immorality is the entirety of the character. So what happens a lot of times with these writers who consider themselves to be the spigot of morality, there was a guy like this very much in my master's class, in my master's program, one of my classes, maybe two. What ends up happening is the bad guys in those stories are caricatures. The good guys in those stories are caricatures. And in my writing, one of the things, so I'll just tell the personal story from my master's program. A lot of my writing, what I try to do is everybody thinks they're the good guy, right? Explore why each person thinks they're the good guy and how, in some ways, they're also the bad guy. This guy hated that. This guy was super religious, hated my writing. And one of the stories that I turned in, what we would do is you had to, if there were 10 people in the class, you had to print out 11 copies, one for each person, one for the professor. You give everyone a copy of your story. Everybody goes home, mark it up. The next week they come back, you have your review. This guy just went on inane rants on my short stories about, I mean, I remember, so one of my short stories was about Fitzgerald and Hemingway, and basically kind of there was a gang of Hemingwayans and a gang of Fitzgeraldians, and it was circled around the Fitzgeraldian. And of course they were talking in slang, right? It was first person narration in slang. And he kept circling things on the story and saying, "Oh, is this cool guy talk again? Is this cool guy talk again?" And it was one of those moments where I realized, "Oh, well, this is just his character coming through in the commentary that he is capable of presenting." Um, and I mean, at that point, it's not criticism, right? It's just he doesn't like it, which that doesn't help a writer. But in my experience with people who consider themselves morality on high, that's where things tend to go. Anything that they don't like ends up being translated very easily in their minds to the immoral. So if you don't like it, it becomes the immoral. Fictionis is the title. The religious guy sounds wretched and abominable. Wasn't a good writer either. So there's that. 532. I tried to think a lonelier thing than any I had seen. Some polar expiation, an omen in the bone of death's tremendous nearness. I probed retrieveless things, my duplicate to borrow. A haggard comfort springs from the belief that somewhere within the clutch of thought there dwells one other creature of heavenly love forgot. I plucked at our partition as one should pry the walls between himself and horror's twin within opposing cells. I almost strove to clasp his hand, such luxury. It grew that as myself could pity him, perhaps he pitied me. Patchy, I think this goes back to the argument as well. In addition to writers who are maybe immoral being better writers, also writers who don't think very highly of themselves are often better writers. Nobody would touch my work with their enemy's ween. So I got to publish my own stuff and try not to get sued. That's a hell of a byline. If you put that in your author's biography, it'll catch attention. Emily Dickinson, in my opinion, the greatest poet of all time. Time and again in her poetry. And I think that this is absolutely impossible to feign. Emily Dickinson in her poetry, I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Emily Dickinson in her poetry, I tried to think a lonelier thing. I tried to think something that was lonelier than me, and it took great powers of thought. Emily Dickinson giving us time and time again underestimations of the self. Emily Dickinson giving us time and time again great waves of nobodiness. Emily Dickinson giving us time and time again these revelations on page that the self involved in the poem is lesser than. I think that's almost impossible to feign. And here she is, in my opinion, the greatest poet of all time. This is in many ways, in my opinion, the same argument as people whose morality, people who don't at least hold themselves as morality on high, being better writers. Let's find another poem. Is there anything you guys want to hear about? Any poems from Emily Dickinson you want to hear? Any subject matters you want to see if there's something she did write about? The loneliness one dare not sound, and would as soon surmise, as in its grave go plumbing to ascertain the size. The loneliness whose worst alarm is lest itself should see, and perish from before itself, for just a scrutiny. The horror not to be surveyed but skirted in the dark, with consciousness suspended, and being under lock. I fear me this is loneliness, the maker of the soul. Its caverns and its corridors illuminate or seal. This is one of the poems that just recently appeared on the Echoes of Emily series here on the channel. The loneliness one dare not sound. What does it mean to sound something? You sound an alarm, right? You sound an alarm when there's a bad thing coming. So if you just simply translate these words, right? The alarm that one would dare not sound, the alarm that one would be super afraid to sound. But instead, we have the loneliness that one would be very, very afraid to sound. What would it mean to sound a loneliness? What would it mean to hit that button and put the self into loneliness? They say that many dogs go off on their own to die. Is it the same for people? The loneliness one dare not sound being, the loneliness one dare not trigger being, that type of solitude the individual should not yearn for. What would that be? The loneliness one dare not sound. Is this a loneliness that's recoverable? Is this a loneliness after which you become irrecoverable? I'm gonna take a drink real quick. I'm a loner. Always have been. I was a kid. Kicking a ball against a wall at recess because I didn't want to play with the other kids, right? Always been this way. There have been moments in my life, seasons, where I was more personable, seasons where there were more people around me. But I'm getting older. This gives me an indelible connection to this poem. I wonder, at some point, am I irrecoverable? At some point, is this all there is to be? At some point, is there no going back? At some point, is loneliness and solitude all there is? I have to wonder. I have to wonder. Because it's all that feels natural. And at some point in your life, what's the reason to be unnatural in those regards? But at the same time, I believe in pushing yourself. I believe in not being comfortable. If I believed in being comfortable, I would not be live streaming at 5:45 when I have to be at work at 11, between 9 and 11. But how much of that is, where do I draw the line? Emily Dickinson must have an answer in this book of poems somewhere. I've yet to find that poem. Leo, when you're so smart, why would you want to be crowded? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I can talk and talk and talk. Who's going to understand me, right? What are the odds that I grab somebody on the street and they're my life partner? I mean, really. Kristen, you can't use a lovely glass, dear, for your drinking water. It came in the plastic. It's Dasani. It's like premium. It's like premium gasoline. Putting it in my body. TLE says Emily is a very elusive woman. I wonder if she ever fell in love. There is reason to believe that she at least felt like she was in love with other people, and this was unrequited love. There is some question as to whether or not she had a romance with a woman that was very close to her. I don't know that I see that. I'm not saying it's impossible, not saying it couldn't have happened. I don't know that I think that a lot of that's conjecture. I think that she was a human being. So probably she can at least convinced herself that she was in love several times, right? I think that The Loneliness One Dare Not Sound is a poem that is struggling very mightily to find reason to believe in love. To give up that hope, to give up that idea would be a loneliness that would be difficult to sound. Loneliness equals self-respect. Loneliness equals weakness. You two have to fight to the death now. Leo and Kristen. We'll only know which of you is correct when there is a survivor. Kristen says, stay busy. I do my best. Are you still friends with your co-host from a few years ago? Haven't talked to him. Kristen, I am disabled, but I do yoga all day. You are a better person than I. I did yoga a few times. I am no good at it. I am worse than no good at it. Too tall in the chat. Please no one drink Dasani. Look it up for your health. I've heard this before. Is it because of it's got salt in it, right? I mean, magnesium sulfate, people take that in potassium chloride, salt. Yeah, I like it. There are far worse things that I have done to my body than drinking Dasani water. Probably. Allegedly. Kristen says, I have issues with plastic, period. Yeah. I wonder if we'll ever replace it. It's very useful. I wonder if we'll ever replace it. That is 3 poems. We are an hour and 5 minutes in. I felt a cleaving in my mind as if my brain had split. I tried to match it seam by seam, but could not make them fit. The thought behind I strove to join unto the thought before, but sequence raveled out of sound like balls upon the floor. Emily Dickinson is very big on the mind and the brain. There's a very interesting book. I'll never remember what it's called. I don't think I have it anymore. But it's about neuroplasticity. It was basically by Jeffrey Schwartz. It was basically the book on neuroplasticity. Very interesting and worth looking into if you have not done any reading on that. Leo says, as someone who likes to be alone, I guess sometimes it's lonely, but it's better than being surrounded by people who aren't good for your soul. There's an interesting dichotomy between being alone and being lonely. You can very easily be lonely in a group of people, right? In fact, probably I would venture to wager it's easier to be lonely with people than without them. But I think that is only for people who are derelict towards lonerdom anyway. When I'm alone, I don't feel alienated. I'm just the only weirdo here. How could I be alienated? But being in groups of people, looking around and realizing, I'm not really one of these, is sometimes disheartening. T.L.E. says, I think she probably had a secret muse, and the muse was a man. Just speculation, though. Is it Higginson that was that her love, or was that the guy who she wrote to? There was a guy, the guy to whom Awake or Oh, the Earth is Made for Lovers. Or no, is it that one? No. Yeah. Oh, the Earth was Made for Lovers. It's the number one poem. It's the I in all of these poems. That was written to a guy that apparently she had a crush on for a very long time. I think he went on to be a senator or something. Not particularly handsome. I certainly think I had a leg up on him in that fashion. Sure, he's more successful than me, but, that's not everything. I'm not a politician. I haven't sold my soul, right? I think I could have been a catch. That's all I'm saying. Kristen says, true, Leo. I believe that is in reference to being alone. Dennis, farm boy, poor but perfect. I'm lost on that one. Leo says, is there a poem about someone who is missing someone that they loved and the person isn't there because top of my head, I don't know. I'm sure that poem is out there. Top of my head, I don't know. I imagine Bukowski has to have a poem about that, but I wouldn't know where to look. One more poem, then we're probably going to go. Someone give me a topic. Someone give me a topic. TLE says, I think if you're going into poetry, you're likely lonely, but in a good way. I don't like being around a lot of people. I like solitude. That's being alone. That's different than being lonely. Being lonely is a qualitative statement. There's no Emily Dickinson poems about eclipses, Leo. Let me check. First lines. Subjects. Leo, I'm terribly sorry. Poem 415, Eclipse. Sunset at night is natural, but sunset on the dawn reverses nature. Master, so midnights do at noon. Eclipses be predicted, and science bows them in. But do one face us suddenly, Jehovah's watch is wrong. Basically, she's saying, if an eclipse pops up and nobody knew about it, you should have been praying before this. Let's see if there's one about Muse. Leo, you get a free one. You get to insult me in any way you find fit. There is nothing for Muse here. Movie recommendation for the crowd, The Neon Demon, 2016. It's on Prime. What is Prime? Kristen says, was a farm boy? Leo says, I've been dying to ask. Yay, I'm glad I did. Yeah, you got me, Leo. You got me. Kristen says, you've always enjoyed solitude, Adrian? Yeah. Always been a loner. Always, always. Always, always, always. That's all there is to it. I'm so upset that there's one on eclipses. Eclipse Eye? Is that the multiple for the plural for eclipse? If I insulted you, I would need a leather whip in my hand, and you would need to be tied up and blown. Wow, Leo, racy. I think that's racy. Maybe I'm misreading that. Is that like 50 Shades of Grey? It would be cool. Oh, Desaad. Very good, Patchy. It would be cool if you have AI pics of that eclipse poem. I will work on it. I will, probably tomorrow, I will try to remember to post them on the community page. It's a note to myself. Patchy says, N.A. Nin says women are more equipped to write good erotica, I recommend. That's probably true. That's probably true. Leo says, I was waiting for Carrie today since you were taking a bit of time to make the video. Glad you went live. Yeah, so there's going to be poetry on the channel every day this month, unless something brutal happens. Now, there was poetry today. It just wasn't the poetry that I had wanted, planned, hoped to be making. I am hoping to get Carrie Part 2 next week. I actually think that was a lot of fun. Episode 1 of Carrie. The Neon... I'll write it down, Patchy. What is Prime? You never told me what Prime was. I was saying something. Amazon Prime. Are they going to ship me the movie? I don't have a DVD player. I certainly don't have a VHS player. My computer doesn't even have a place to put thumb drives. I have to plug in an extension to put thumb drives in it. It's irritating. But I'm behind the times. Way behind the times. I, by the way, just ordered more energy drinks on Amazon. C4 energy drinks. By the time they got to my apartment, there were 3 of them. They were selling 3 energy drinks for the price that 12 energy drinks normally cost. I was so upset. I don't know how long it's going to take my letter to get to Amazon, but they're going to get that letter, and they're going to be upset. Leo says, it was fun, and I liked all the different editing for the first Carrie. If only you were covered in blood at the end part. Well, we haven't got to the end part yet. There's still time. I've got a couple pigs coming through Amazon. I don't have Prime, so it's going to take me at least a month to get them. But we will see how that goes. Patchy says, that sucks about the energy drinks. It does. Although, maybe I shouldn't get into this. Maybe this is too edgy for YouTube. Maybe I got no more maybes, but I've been trying to cut back on energy drinks. And just on a whim, I decided to pick up a can of Zyn, Z-Y-N. I don't know if you guys have ever had that. Wooey. That stuff is insane. Leo says, are you sure the Amazon driver didn't drink them? I'm positive. I even went back and checked. Yes, on their profile, they are they're showing the C4, all of the same pictures that the official C4 seller on Amazon shows, but it clearly says 3 cans very deep in the description. So that's on me, but I'm still angry. That was obviously an attempt at deception. Clearly and obviously an attempt at deception. Patchy says, so what streaming services do you have? You're looking at him. This guy. That's all I got right now. I don't have anything right now. I don't have anything. Lindsay says, I don't know how you can maintain working overnights. Have you ever considered going back to working days? No, I don't think so. I have to find a way to become a millionaire in the next couple of years before overnights kill me, because I don't think I can go back to... Do you know? So I work in an area that's a little bit rougher. Like, it's not super rough, but it's a little bit rougher. Lots of homeless folk, lots of theft, um, lots of stuff going on. Do you know how many people I have allegedly MF'd in the past 5 years? How many absolute tirades I have gone on out of necessity, allegedly, out of necessity, the past few years, and they don't let you do that during the days. They don't let you do that during the days anywhere I've ever worked. So I don't know. I think I might just be an outdoor cat now. I might not be able to be domesticated. What is MF? Mother. Just allegedly. I've thrown a couple of those around the past few years. Somebody getting violent in the store, etc. Lindsay says, I don't know how you. Oh, yeah. Leo says, I'm not laughing because I would not buy energy drinks. I let all my inner rage fuel me naturally from the inside. That worked for the first 2 years I was on overnights. After 2 years of, I don't know if you work overnights, Leo. After 2 years of overnights, rage doesn't cut it. Self-hatred doesn't cut it. Patchy says, I wrote a blue stories. It's for other people to be able to get writing ideas from, is for other people to be able to get writing ideas from, to sort of kickstart a good literature run for humanity. I mean, pretty sure I have. I'm all for it, Patchy. We need it. Patchy continues, that could probably make you a millionaire. Something has to. I don't want to have to go back to OnlyFans. But I got to find my exit from the workforce somehow. So, maybe we'll get there. We'll see. What else is going on? Anything? Are you union? No, I don't. Even if we were unionized, I wouldn't join a union. I don't believe in unions. Not saying that you can't, just saying that I don't. So, please read the eclipse one of those. 4:15, I believe. Are you big on eclipses, Leo? Or is this like a recent thing? Sunset at night is natural, but sunset on the dawn reverses nature. Master, so midnight's due at noon. Eclipses be predicted, and science bows them in. But do one face us suddenly, Jehovah's watch is wrong. No, isn't you're not big. Oh, you're not big on eclipses. You just wanted to pull that victory lap again. I see. You got one over on old Adrian, and now you just want to hear it again. I get it. I got you, Leo. Anything else going on? Anything at all? We've been on for an hour and a half now. Going once. Going twice. It was good spending time with you guys. Thank you, Leo. You have been great too. I expect more questions the next time. You'll have to get to your brainstorming. I will, if I do not remember to create images based on that poem, remind me. Have a good night, work day, Lindsay says. I will do my best. I have not slept, so we will see. Leo says, wait, what? Wait, how? I did have about the Green Book behind you and Einstein, but maybe for night. The Green Book, this one, that is Shirley Jackson. Let Me Tell You by Shirley Jackson, a compilation of her short stories. Absolutely worth a read, absolutely worth an investment. So there is that. Anything else? Going once? Going twice? I will see you guys tomorrow.